I found my real brother at my wedding. Our MOM tried to hide it. Stop the wedding. The words cut through the chapel's holy silence like shattered glass. Every head turned toward the man standing in the aisle, a stranger who looked exactly like me. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand, crystal shattering on marble. Her face went bone white. "No," she whispered. "Not now. Not here." The stranger's eyes, my eyes, locked with mine. "You think you know your family, Wesley? You have no idea." My bride's hand trembled in mine. The priest stood frozen. And in that suspended moment, my entire life fractured into before and after. But that wasn't where the story started. You're probably wondering how it got this bad. How a mother could hide a son from his own brother. How a wedding could become a courtroom where family secrets stood trial. What happened next would tear my family apart and put the pieces back together in ways nobody could have predicted. Before we continue, hit subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because what came next redefined everything I thought I knew about family. My name is Wesley. For 28 years, I believed I was an only child, the sole inheritor of my parents' attention, their legacy, their love. My mother, Eleanor, called me her miracle baby, born after years of fertility struggles. My father, Richard, built his construction business from nothing, telling me daily, "This will all be yours someday." The illusion was perfect. Family photos showed 3 smiling faces. Holiday traditions involved just us 3. Even our family jokes revolved around the triangular team of our household. Wesley's life seems perfect, but there are cracks in the foundation. What happens when he starts asking questions about his mother's mysterious long trips when he was a child? I met Amelia during law school. She had this way of seeing through facades that both terrified and fascinated me. The first time she met my parents, she noticed things I'd been blind to for years. "Your mom tenses up whenever you ask about her childhood," Amelia mentioned after dinner. "And there's a space in your family photo wall, like something used to hang there." I laughed it off. Mom's just private. And that space probably held a mirror or something. But the seed was planted. I started noticing the gaps. The way my mother changed the subject when adoption came up in movies, the locked drawer in her desk, the way she'd sometimes stare at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, part love, part sorrow, part fear. The wedding planning amplified everything. My mother insisted on handling all the arrangements, becoming increasingly controlling. When Amelia suggested we write our own vows, my mother nearly had a panic attack. "Traditional vows are fine," she insisted, her knuckles white around her wine glass. "Why fix what isn't broken?" The week before the wedding, I found her crying in the garden. "I just want everything to be perfect for you, Wesley. You're my whole world." I hugged her, never suspecting that her world was much larger than she'd ever admitted. The mother's controlling behavior isn't just about perfectionism. It's about preventing something specific from being revealed at the wedding. The wedding day dawned cloudless and bright. The chapel smelled of lilies and hope. I stood at the altar, watching Amelia approach in her grandmother's lace gown, and thought, "This is perfect." Then the doors burst open. He stood there, silhouetted against the morning light, a man with my height, my jawline, my eyes. The family resemblance was so striking that several guests actually gasped. "Stop the wedding," he said, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. "No," she whispered. "Not now. Not here." A stranger who looks exactly like the groom crashes the wedding. Who is he, and why is the mother so terrified of his appearance? The man walked down the aisle, his eyes never leaving mine. "You think you know your family, Wesley? You have no idea." Amelia's hand tightened in mine. "Who is that?" she whispered. "I have no idea," I said. But even as I spoke the words, I knew they weren't true. Some deep, primal part of me recognized him. My father stepped forward, his face ashen. "Son, this isn't the time or place." "Son?" the stranger interrupted. "You haven't called me that in 26 years. That's when I saw it. The way my mother couldn't look at either of us, the way my father's shoulders slumped in defeat, the way this stranger held himself with the same posture I saw in my own reflection. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The stranger isn't just a relative. He's Wesley's identical twin brother, a brother he never knew existed. The reception became a wake for the life I thought I'd had. While guests whispered in corners, I pulled the stranger, my brother, into my father's study. Start talking, I said, my voice shaking. His name was Julian. He was 28, born 20 minutes before me. Our mother had given him up for adoption to her sister, the aunt I knew as Aunt Carol, who died when I was 7. Mom got pregnant at 17, Julian explained, his voice steady though his hands trembled. Her parents forced her to choose, keep one baby and give up the other, or they'd disown her completely. She chose you. The words hit like physical blows. Why come now? Why ruin my wedding? Because Mom promised she'd tell you when you turned 18, then 21, then when you got engaged. She kept finding excuses. He pulled a worn envelope from his jacket. This is from Aunt Carol's things. It explains everything. Julian has letters that prove their mother knowingly kept the brothers apart for decades. What other secrets do these documents contain? The letters were a timeline of betrayal. Our mother had paid Julian's adoptive parents to move across the country. She'd manipulated family gatherings to ensure we never met. She'd even convinced my father that keeping the secret was for Wesley's own good. But the most damning evidence was a photo, 2 identical babies in matching blue blankets, one being handed to a crying woman I recognized as Aunt Carol. I looked at Julian, really looked at him, and saw myself in every feature. The same crooked smile, the same scar above the right eyebrow, the same way we both stood with our weight on our left foot. That's when I stopped being the victim and started building a case. I told Amelia later that night. Not for revenge, for the truth. The mother didn't just hide Julian's existence. She actively paid to keep him away and manipulated everyone around her to maintain the lie. What our mother never anticipated was that her 2 sons, the lawyer and the investigator, would make an unstoppable team when we finally joined forces. Julian worked as a private investigator. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. While I analyzed legal documents, he tracked down family members who knew the truth but had been silenced. We discovered our mother had told everyone a different story, that Julian died at birth, that he was adopted by strangers, that he wanted nothing to do with our family. The brothers discover their mother told contradictory stories to different family members. What was she so desperate to hide? We found our maternal grandmother in a nursing home, her memory fading but her guilt still sharp. Your mother was so young, she whispered, clutching my hand. We thought we were doing what was best. 1 baby she could raise properly. 2 would have ruined her life. Did you ever consider what was best for us? Julian asked, his voice gentle but firm. She looked away. We thought adopted children were happier with couples who couldn't have their own. The pieces were coming together, but the picture they formed was uglier than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about a teenage pregnancy. It was about family shame, class prejudice, and a grandmother who valued appearances above everything. Meanwhile, our mother swung between desperate apologies and furious denials. She showed up at my apartment, her eyes red-rimmed. Wesley, you have to understand, I was a child myself. I did what my parents told me to do. And for the next 26 years? I asked quietly, what's your excuse for that? She had no answer. The grandmother was the mastermind behind the separation, but the mother maintained the lie for decades out of shame and convenience. We planned the confrontation for Sunday dinner, the same weekly tradition where our family had pretended to be complete for 28 years. The table was set with my mother's best china. The smell of roast chicken filled the air. Everything looked normal, but nothing would ever be normal again. Julian arrived with me. When my mother opened the door, her smile froze. Wesley, she said, her voice strained. What is he doing here? He's family, I said, walking past her. Isn't that what you always say about Sunday dinner? Family only. My father stood when we entered the dining room. Boys, he said, and the words sounded both natural and heartbreaking. The brothers confront their parents at a family dinner that was built on lies. How will the parents explain a lifetime of deception? We laid the evidence on the table between the mashed potatoes and green beans, the letters, the photos, the adoption papers Julian had finally obtained. I know everything, I said, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. The choice, the payments to Aunt Carol, the stories you told everyone. My mother collapsed into a chair. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Julian asked. Because from where we're standing, you had 2 sons and decided to keep one and discard the other. Tears streamed down her face. I thought about you every day, Julian. Every birthday, every Christmas. But you never reached out, he interrupted. You never told Wesley. You never gave us the choice to know each other. My father finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. I wanted to tell you, Wesley. When you turned 18, I begged your mother to tell you the truth. But she was terrified of losing you. So you let me lose my brother instead? I asked. The silence that followed was its own answer. The father knew the truth all along and participated in the deception, making him equally responsible for the brothers' separation. The family dinner broke the dam. Within weeks, relatives we hadn't heard from in years started calling, each with their own piece of the puzzle. A cousin confessed she'd been told Julian was troubled and had been sent to boarding school. An uncle admitted he'd been instructed never to mention the twin who didn't make it. The family mythology was unraveling, and with it, my mother's carefully constructed reality. As more relatives come forward with their versions of the story, the mother's web of lies becomes impossible to maintain. What final secret will emerge? The breaking point came when Julian found our birth certificates. Mine listed my parents as Richard and Eleanor Hayes. His showed the same parents, but with a different last name, Hayes Smith, and a handwritten note. Twin A, released for adoption to Carol Smith. We confronted our mother with the documents. Why the different last names? Why go through the trouble of creating separate identities? She broke down completely. My parents insisted we give Julian their surname, so he'd still be theirs in some way. It was their compromise. They got to keep him in the family while maintaining the appearance that I'd only had one baby. The truth was both simpler and more complicated than we'd imagined. It wasn't just about shame, it was about control. My grandparents had controlled my mother, and she in turn had tried to control our family narrative. Amelia, who'd been quietly supportive through everything, finally spoke up. You had 28 years to fix this. What were you waiting for? My mother looked at her hands. I thought if enough time passed, it wouldn't matter anymore. I thought I could love Wesley enough for both of you. The words hung in the air, both pathetic and profound. The grandparents insisted on keeping Julian in the family through surname manipulation, revealing their controlling nature and the family's twisted priorities. The financial implications emerged slowly. My father's will, written years earlier, left everything to me with no mention of Julian. Family trusts, property deeds, even the family vacation home, all were structured around the fiction that I was an only child. When Julian and I met with my father's lawyer to update everything, the depth of the deception became clear. The brothers discover their father's estate plan completely excludes Julian. How deep does the financial discrimination go? Your father came to me 5 years ago wanting to add Julian to his will. The lawyer confessed. Your mother threatened to leave him if he did. She said it would raise too many questions. I looked at Julian, seeing the hurt in his eyes, the same hurt I felt. We weren't just fighting for our past, we were fighting for our future. We made the decision together. We would split everything equally. The business, the properties, the investments, all of it. It wasn't about the money, it was about acknowledgement. About saying, we are both sons. We both matter. When we told our parents, my mother looked like we'd slapped her. But the business was always meant for you, Wesley. It's your legacy. It's our legacy, I corrected. Mine and Julian's. The business partners were notified. Family friends were told the truth. With each revelation, my mother's carefully constructed world crumbled a little more. But something surprising happened. As her lies fell away, my relationship with Julian grew stronger. We discovered we both loved classic rock, hated cilantro, and had the same dry sense of humor. We'd missed 28 years, but we were determined not to miss any more. The mother opposed including Julian in the will not just to maintain her lie, but because she genuinely viewed Wesley as her real son and Julian as a mistake to be erased. My mother asked to see us one last time before she and my father moved to a smaller home, a consequence of dividing the estate equally. She'd aged dramatically in the months since the wedding. The elegant society woman was gone, replaced by a tired, defeated grandmother. I'm sorry, she said, and for the first time, it sounded real. Not just for getting caught. For everything. For the choice, the lies, the years I stole from both of you. Julian spoke first. Why me? Last month, Julian's daughter was born. We stood together in the hospital, looking at this new life through the nursery window. No secrets, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. No lies. She'll grow up knowing her whole family. I put my arm around my brother. The man who crashed my wedding and gave me back a piece of myself I never knew was missing. Family isn't about blood or last names or carefully constructed stories. It's about showing up, telling the truth, and choosing each other, even when the truth is messy and painful and complicated. And sometimes, the family you find is more important than the one you're born into.